We are slowly approaching the halfway point of the NFL regular season. Johnny Sports Network, here to provide you with my Week 8 NFL predictions. Last week was another strong week, 13-2, 25-4 in the last 2 weeks. And it really means a lot that all of you are still sticking by me, even stuck by me when I was in a slump. But these last 2 weeks, it has been phenomenal. 65-42 on the season, which is only 60.7%, but it could be worse as this has been the most unpredictable and confusing NFL season so far. What does Week 8 have in store for us? Without further ado, let's get right into the Week 8 NFL predictions. As always, we begin with Thursday Night Football. This week we have the Vikings and the Rams. The Vikings lost their first game of the season last week to the Lions in a game that was back and forth and exciting from start to finish, while the Rams, they got the win against the Raiders, but there wasn't anything about that game that really stuck out to me as far as them winning in dominant fashion. It just looked like to me the Rams, they did just enough to win that game, which at the end of the day, all that matters is whether you won or lost the game. The Rams, they did win the game. There was talks of Cooper Kupp returning to the lineup last week, but he went through warm-ups and they determined that it was best if he sat out at least one more game. Cooper Kupp is in line to return for the Rams in this game. However, in the past 24 hours or so, there's been rumors circulating that the Rams, they are open to trading Cooper Kupp. He is on the trade block as the NFL trade deadline approaches. And was I surprised to see the Vikings lose last week? Absolutely not. I did anticipate it. The last time the Vikings, they did start 5-0, it went downhill for the Vikings. And I would not be surprised if it happened again. As last time Sam Darnold was in a winning position, things just started to fall apart for Sam Darnold. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. I would lean towards it being a possibility that it does happen. But at the very least, I think the Vikings, they do win this week. And they do bounce back from their first loss of the year. But we will see down the line if the Vikings, if they do start to go downhill, if Sam Darnold starts to go downhill. But I do think the Vikings, they do win this week, though. Ravens and Browns. The Browns fell to 1-6 on the season. They even traded Amari Cooper early last week. Deshaun Watson is out for the season with an Achilles injury. And the fantasy football doctor, Dr. Morse, he said that it's possible that Deshaun Watson's Achilles injury could be career-ending. And now the Browns, they turn to Jameis Winston at quarterback is what I would guess. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he did take some snaps in the game last week, but Jameis Winston finished out the game, and he at least made the final score a little more respectable. I do anticipate the Browns will turn to Jameis Winston. The Ravens, they have now won 5 in a row after starting the season 0-2. This pick is one of the self-explanatory picks this week, as it feels like there is a couple of them, which could be too good to be true, because there is at least 1 or 2 games a season where John Harbaugh's coaching decisions cost the Ravens a win or two. But as much as I do think Jameis Winston starting for the Browns would give the Browns a little momentum, a little more confidence moving forward, it's just hard to pick against the Ravens right now as they have won 5 straight. They do look like the second best team in the AFC, only behind the Chiefs. And I think the Ravens, they do make it 6 in a row. Titans and Lions, as unpredictable as the NFL season has been, this pick, it feels pretty self-explanatory. The Titans only have one win on the season, and it's against the Dolphins without Tua. And without Tua on the Dolphins offense is really tough to watch. And it doesn't matter to me who starts at quarterback for the Titans for this particular game, whether it is Mason Rudolph or Will Levis. The story of the year for the Titans has been how good their defense is, as they are leading the NFL in total defense. The defense has done everything they could to put the Titans in a great position to win games, but their offense just doesn't do enough. And they go on the road to take on who I feel like need to be the favorites to win the NFC, the Lions. And the Lions, they overcame adversity last week. It was the first game without Aiden Hutchinson. They were behind early in the game. Then they rallied to take the lead. Then they surrendered multiple 11-point leads in that game and came from behind to win on a game-winning field goal to move to 5-1 on the season. I am going to pick the Lions to win this game convincingly. As much as the Titans have the potential to keep the Titans in this game for as long as possible, I just think against a juggernaut like the Lions offense will be too much. Despite Sam Laporta struggling as of late, despite Jameson Williams facing a multi-game suspension, I really don't think this game is even close. I'll be surprised if the Titans keep it within one score when the fourth quarter begins. Colts and Texans. For the Colts, Anthony Richardson made his return after missing the last couple of games with an injury. And the Colts got a win over the Dolphins in a low-scoring game where Tim Boyle was playing quarterback for the Dolphins. Tim Boyle is now the fourth different quarterback to take snaps for the Dolphins this season, while the Texans, a heartbreaking loss to the Packers on the road last week. The Texans were in a position to win the game, but their defense could not make a stop at the end. The Packers were able to get into field goal range, and the Packers won on a game-winning field goal. We saw these two teams play each other in week 1, and the Texans had a 2-point victory in that game. As of late, the Texans, they have had the Colts number. And I do think that does apply once again this week. Even though there has been games where CJ Stroud, he has struggled in some games, and he has not reached his full potential in his second season yet as CJ Stroud. There were a lot of expectations for CJ Stroud going into the season. But I do think CJ Stroud, he does bounce back this week. And I do think the Texans, they do get the win over the Colts. As the Texans, despite some of their struggles in some games this season, I do think that they are, at the very least, the third best team in the AFC behind the Chiefs and the Ravens. Packers and Jaguars. The Jaguars, they got the win last week in London against the Patriots in what was a must-win for the Jaguars. If they wanted to have any hopes for the rest of the season, as they are still 2-5 on the year. But if the Jaguars, if they lost that game to the Patriots, I anticipate that Doug Peterson would be let go today. And by today, I mean Tuesday. I do feel like this game is going to be a letdown for the Jaguars, as they have been in London the last 2 weeks. And the Packers, they have been playing well since the return of Jordan Love, with the exception of some mistakes against the Vikings. But the Packers, they are off an emotional victory against the Texans, winning on a game-winning field goal. But as long as Jordan Love is not turning the football over and playing clean football, there is no doubt in my mind the Packers do win this game. I do think they take advantage of the fact that Jaguars, they've been in London the last 2 weeks, and I do think that is going to be a factor in this game, as they had gotten used to being in London, and I'm just having a hard time picking against the Packers and a hard time picking the Jaguars against a team that has a winning record. And I am curious to see if the Jaguars do part ways with Doug Peterson before the end of the season. Cardinals and Dolphins. The Cardinals, they continue to be the most unpredictable team in the league, as they upset the Chargers on Monday Night Football last week. And they go on the road to take on the Dolphins. And there is a lot of optimism for the Dolphins moving forward, as Tua is back for the Dolphins. At least he is in line to play this week after missing the last 4 games, being on IR with a concussion. And Tua is not going to wear the Guardian cap, which a lot of people are questioning why he isn't, given his history with concussions. But it's none of my business, and it's honestly none of ours, why he's not going to wear the Guardian cap. As I said earlier in the season on the debates on whether he should retire or not, to let him make his own decisions, every person I have seen so far has picked the Dolphins to win this game. And for me, I feel like it's a lot of people assuming that Tua being back for the Dolphins just means that the Dolphins offense is just going to miraculously improve, which I think it's going to take at least a game for the Dolphins offense to really get back into the full function with Tua, which is why, despite how unpredictable the Cardinals are, I'm going to pick them to win this game and pull off another upset. And if this game was in about maybe 2 or 3 weeks, I would pick the Dolphins to win. But the fact it's Tua's first game in over a month, I think it's going to take him at least one game to fully get acclimated again to the offense, which is why I'm picking the Cardinals. Jets and Patriots, and this is the game of the week where I pick someone because I have to pick someone to win, as these are two teams that are not really trustworthy when it comes to picking them to win. When the Jets parted ways with Robert Saleh, hearing that the players were absolutely blindsided by the news, when they didn't let Robert Saleh address the team, letting him know he was being let go, I did not think the Jets were going to have any motivation whatsoever the rest of the season. And then they play the Bills close on Monday Night Football. And then the Jets, they make a move to trade for Devontae Adams to make Aaron Rodgers happy and more motivated, trading for someone he already has good history with, great chemistry with. And the Jets, I do feel they have some motivation, as this was an effort to try to give the Jets a spark moving forward. They start off the game well against the Steelers, but then the Steelers, they were dominant in the game when it mattered. And the Jets have now fallen to 2-5 on the season. And I do think that there are a lot of question marks. Does Aaron Rodgers still have it? Does he need to retire because he doesn't seem to have it anymore? Drake May will be making his third start in the NFL for the Patriots. And Drake May, he did look improved compared to his first game, which is expected, as the Jaguars, they are not the same magnitude of an opponent the Texans are. But if Drake May would have started against the Dolphins without Tua, like I thought the Patriots should have, the Patriots, I think, would have won that game, and Drake May would have a lot of confidence going deeper into the season. I do think the Patriots, they make this game close. I do think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think both defenses, they do hold their own this game, and this is your 17-13 game of the week. I don't see a lot of scoring in this game, but I do think the Jets, they do win. I'm picking the Jets because I have to pick somebody, but I would not be surprised no matter what the outcome is for this game, as both these teams are just completely untrustworthy to pick right now. Falcons and Buccaneers, and this is one of the more underrated matchups of the week, because what's at stake in this game, the winner of this game will take sole possession of first place in the NFC South. And we saw these two teams earlier in the season in Atlanta, and it was one of the best games of the season so far, as it went into overtime, and the Falcons, they won in overtime, even though the Buccaneers, they were the better team throughout most of the game, but the Falcons, they were better when it mattered. And the Buccaneers, they were favored by 2.5 points on Monday afternoon going into their game against the Ravens for Monday Night Football. But then Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both injured in that game. And it's possible they will be without both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans in this matchup. Chris Godwin for sure will be out for this game. But Mike Evans, it's a real possibility. Although Mike Evans, he is one of those players that is built different. He's been very durable. He's only missed, I think, 9 games in his career so far. And his career is about 10 or 11 seasons in, which that is very durable and very reliable. But I do think since that game, I haven't looked at point spreads or odds at all, but I would imagine the Falcons, they may have been shifted to a 1.5 or 2-point favorite in this game. I am going to pick the Falcons to win this game, despite a letdown game last week against the Seahawks, where the Seahawks, they were dealing with injuries, but the Seahawks, they were able to rally. But I just think that this is a bounce-back week for the Falcons. Eagles and Bengals, both teams got into the win column last week. The Eagles, a dominant win over the Giants in what was Saquon Barkley's return to MetLife Stadium. While the Bengals, they overcame what I felt like was a potential trap game for them. When you consider the fact that prior to last week, the Bengals, they had not been able to win in Cleveland since 2017. Both teams, I feel, have not reached their full potential yet this season. For the Eagles, part of that is because they have been dealing with injuries, and they still are dealing with injuries. While the Bengals, they have struggled pass defensive wise, but the Bengals defensively, they have been getting better these last couple of weeks. But part of that I do feel is because they have been up against a couple of the inferior teams in the league. And an inferior team in the league is, and I'm not saying it in a negative way, it's just that it's teams that are towards the bottom as far as league power rankings for those of you that do those. I do think this game is going to be high scoring. I think it's going to take at least 35 points to win this game, as both defenses have not really reached their full potential yet, in my opinion. They have had the fortunate turn of events where they got to go up against some of the bottom of the barrel teams in the league. And in a high scoring game, I think the Eagles win by a field goal. And this may end up being one of the best games of the week, which I'm a little bit surprised that the NFL decided to move this to an early window game, but I understand why they did it. But I think based off how this game is going to go and how the other game is going to go, the NFL, they may regret that decision, though. But we'll see. Saints and Chargers. The Saints desperate to get back in the win column, as they have now lost 5 in a row after starting the season 2-0, while the Chargers, they look to generate more productive offense, as they did not score a single touchdown last week against the Cardinals. All of their points were from field goals. And Saints fans are really lobbying for the Saints to part ways with Dennis Allen. And the Saints last played on Thursday night. For those of you that are regulars to this channel, I do always bring up that I do like the teams that played on Thursday night the last week more often than not. But this is one of those situations where I don't think the rest is going to matter in this game, as this is a short week for the Chargers. But I do think the Chargers, they do win this game by dominating the line of scrimmage. Is the Saints, they struggled to stop the run. They have struggled to stop the run throughout the entire season. And I think that J.K. Dobbins is going to have a big game in this one. And the question is, how much longer until the Saints, they do make a move to part ways with Dennis Allen? As if the Saints do indeed lose this game, will be now 6 in a row after starting the season 2-0, and Derek Carr is still injured. And I feel like they might as well just shut Derek Carr down for the season, as if the Saints do indeed lose this game, even if he was ready to come back next week, I don't think the Saints can rally at this point in the season. I am going to pick the Chargers to absolutely dominate this game, and I'll be surprised if this game is close. Spencer Rattler, he did not look good at all in his NFL debut, which is understandable. Maybe he'll do a little bit better this week, but we'll have to wait and see. Bills and Seahawks, both teams in the win column last week. The Bills against the Titans in what was Amari Cooper's debut for the Bills. He even caught a touchdown. And the Seahawks, a convincing and dominant win on the road against the Falcons, despite the Seahawks being a little short-handed. And now for the Seahawks, DK Metcalf is being ruled week to week. I think it's a strong possibility DK Metcalf does not play in this game. And despite that having a huge effect on the Seahawks, this was the most difficult game of the week for me to predict. And the reason why is because when it comes to predicting whether the Seahawks win or not, it's based off of which Seahawks defense shows up. And I've seen some people mention it, but I have been mentioning it for a couple of seasons now. And it's been the case for the Seahawks for at least 3-4 seasons now. The Seahawks, they either look like they're a top 5 defense in the league, or they look like a bottom 5 defense in the league, and it's nothing in between. Very rarely will you see a Seahawks defense in a game where they look like a mid-tier defense, either a top 5 defense or a bottom 5 defense. And when I look at the 2 games the Bills have lost so far this season, they have been on the road to the Ravens and the Texans, 2 of the top 3 teams in the AFC. The Bills, they are either the 4th best team in the AFC or the 5th, depending on how you feel. I am going to pick the Bills to win this game, and depending on who plays and who doesn't play for the Seahawks, I don't know if it matters too much. I just think that the Bills, they do have the confidence going, as the trade for Amari Cooper, I think, is going to be really crucial for the Bills down the line. And I do think they win once again this week. Bears and Commanders. This game was originally in the early window, but the NFL made the move to flex this game and move the Eagles and Bengals in the early window. And it's understandable why the NFL would make a move like this, as when you look at this matchup, you say this is a matchup between the top 2 picks in this season's NFL draft going against each other. However, the status for Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels is not even in question. It's in doubt at this point, as Jayden Daniels, he left the game early against the Panthers last week with injured ribs, and Marcus Mariota finished out the game for the Commanders in what was a dominant win over the Panthers. And the Bears, they had their bye week last week, and Caleb Williams has been getting better and better as this season has gone along, as I anticipated. As I did see some people on social media talk about how Caleb Williams, it looks like he isn't ready for the big time. How Caleb Williams, he's not going to live up to the hype, as Caleb Williams had this generational talent hype built around him. People were counting him out after 2 games, which honestly, in my opinion, that isn't a smart thing to do, as I knew it would take at least 5 games for Caleb Williams to fully adapt to the NFL, and now he has done that. I think that with or without Jayden Daniels active for the Commanders on Sunday, I think the Bears win no matter what. I just think Jayden Daniels being in or out is determining if the game is going to be close or not, because I can't trust Marcus Mariota against a team that is doing well, as he really benefited with the Panthers being 1-6. I think the Bears win with or without Jayden Daniels. Panthers and Broncos, and this is another game that feels pretty self-explanatory. The Panthers only having 1 win this season. There has been a couple of games where they looked somewhat competitive to an extent, but they only have 1 win to show for it. And Andy Dalton has been struggling. And I feel like it's only a matter of time until Bryce Young gets another chance to start for the Panthers. And they go on the road to take on a Broncos team that started the season slow. They were 0-2 to start the season, but they have won 4 out of their last 5 games. Bo Nix is starting to figure things out a little bit. He has been managing the games really well. Javonte Williams is getting back into the mix as he had 2 touchdowns in last week's game on Thursday night against the Saints. And the Broncos, they are in the top 3 in total defense in the NFL. And I think the Broncos, they win this game convincingly. As the Panthers, they have struggled the entire season and only 1 win to show for it. I just think the Panthers, they just need to look forward to 2025. Look forward to the fact that they have their first round pick this season. I think the Broncos, they make it 5 out of their last 6 games. As the Broncos, they have been playing better as this season has gone along, just like last season. Chiefs and Raiders. The last time these two teams played each other, it was on Christmas Day last year, and the Raiders upset the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And that was the last time the Chiefs lost a game. They have not lost a game since that day. The Chiefs are the only remaining undefeated team left in the league. And they take on the Raiders, where the Raiders, they have continued to be absolutely dysfunctional. I wish the Raiders would trade Max Crosby to a contender. It's gotten to the point where the Raiders, they are signing Desmond Ridder, as Aiden O'Connell is going to be out for multiple weeks. And this is another pick where it just feels pretty self-explanatory. Josh Jacobs left in the offseason. Devontae Adams was traded last week. And the Raiders should honestly trade Max Crosby, but Max Crosby, based off his demeanor, he doesn't want to be traded. He wants to play his entire career with the Raiders. And there's no question in my mind, as much as Antonio Pierce, he had the game plan to slowing down Mahomes on Christmas Day last year. And Mahomes hasn't exactly played well from a stats standpoint this season. He is the leading contender for MVP right now, which I feel like that's only the case because the Chiefs are still undefeated, and they will remain undefeated after this game. I do think they win against the Raiders very convincingly. Sunday Night Football, Cowboys and 49ers. For the Cowboys, they had their bye week last week, which I'm going to be honest, I really do think their bye week could not have been at a better time. As the Cowboys, they have been struggling all season long, and in 2 of their 3 wins this season so far, they've done just enough to win the game. And the one game they've won convincingly so far this season was against the Browns. And we have seen what the Browns have been this season. The status for Micah Parsons is unknown for this game. It's unclear. The Cowboys, they have so many injuries on defense. While the 49ers, the injuries, they keep piling up. Now Brandon Ayuk is out for the season. Deebo Samuel was hospitalized for pneumonia. George Kittle is injured. There's a long shot that Christian McCaffrey plays in this game, as Kyle Shanahan did say that it's a long shot that he plays this week, and it's likely he doesn't, but there's a better chance that he will return to the lineup after the 49ers bye week. And in a game where there's so many injuries, I am going to go with the 49ers to win this game. As the 49ers, they have really had the Cowboys number in recent years. And I do think that trend continues. Week 8 concludes with Monday Night Football, Giants and Steelers. The Giants played their worst game of the season last week against the Eagles in what was Saquon Barkley's return to MetLife Stadium, and he had a dominant performance against his former team. And the Giants go on the road to take on the Steelers, a Steelers team that is 5-2 on the season, and they turned to Russell Wilson to start at quarterback, which really surprised a lot of people, almost everyone, including myself, as I felt like Justin Fields, he at least was deserving of keeping his starting role, but they made the decision to start Russell Wilson, and it paid off for this week at least, as the Steelers, they were dominant in that second half, as the Jets did have the lead early on in the game, but as the game went along, the Steelers, they just got better, and now the Steelers are 5-2, and no matter who would be at quarterback for the Steelers in this game, whether it would have been Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, I think this Giants team, they have lost some confidence in this last week. As up until last week's game, the only bad game they really played was against the Vikings in week 1, and even they had an early lead in that game, and they were competitive for a little bit in that game. But the Giants, coming off of their worst game of the year, and a Steelers team that is confident with Russell Wilson under center last week, I just think this is a recipe for a convincing Steelers victory. And that will do it for my Week 8 NFL predictions. Comment your predictions down below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. And as far as uploads for later on in the week, I may do a World Series predictions video, but if I don't, I will either put my World Series prediction in my community notes, or maybe in the comment section. I may upload some YouTube shorts this week if there are events that take place in sports that stick out to me. I will do my Week 7 NFL takeaways on YouTube Shorts either on Wednesday or Thursday. And that is all I have for you. Enjoy the games this week. Until next time, and remember, Vegas is always watching.